Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Seriously in Business podcast. I have a slightly different guest to share with you today, and I'm so excited to introduce you to her. She is an OT, so an occupational therapist, and she's going to share some really cool things about, firstly, how she works remotely. So we're in Australia, and she works in remote Indigenous communities, which is so incredible. But she talks about the experience of living in remote communities and what that's like. She talks about how she got to where she is today in her business. She also has a side of her business that teaches therapists and other people that serve people in business, how they can really regulate themselves and how they can run sustainable businesses that don't burn themselves out. And so I also chat with Mia around how we can kind of regulate our nervous system, what things to look out for when things are dysregulated, and little things we can do in our lives and in our businesses and in our daily schedules that are going to help us to not get burnt out, not to help us get dysregulated, not to help us stop enjoying life and business. But she's really practical and really matter of fact that life will have tricky bits. Business does have things that we do or don't enjoy in it, and how we can stand through those and enjoy those things and support ourselves through the harder times in our business. So I'm really excited to share this episode with you. So if you don't know, Mia Poklepovich is a creative and energetic mental health and occupational therapist behind the OT Inspire Australia, which is a female-led OT practice based in Alice Springs in Australia, servicing communities throughout the Northern Territory. Mia is passionate about Indigenous health and working as a mental health OT, spending a lot of her time working very far away from the nearest city or town. Working in such isolated regions in incredibly challenging and complex populations, Mia has learned a thing or two about workplace well-being, managing stress and burnout in the workplace. Having experienced burnout herself, she is now on a mission to prevent this in the space as best as she can, while still doing the job that she loves with all of her heart. Mia is passionate about female-led businesses and is currently living her dream life somewhere between the desert and the ocean. So I'm so excited to introduce Mia to you. Let's dive into this episode. Welcome, Mia, to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my God, thank you, Jack. I'm really excited. It's going to be a really fun chat because all of your episodes are.
Look, I try, but sometimes I'm in like a less fun mood. But today we're going to go for fun, so I'm excited. I would love to know the question I ask everyone, and particular, I'm very interested to hear what your answer is to this. Of what does an average day in your life and business look like?
Well, average day in my life and business, there's probably a couple. So there's probably two that I float between a lot. So I work as a remote occupational therapist. So I work out in remote Indigenous communities. So when I am out in community, my day usually starts at like 5 a.m. I will have a coffee because it's very early and then drive out to the airport where we catch a tiny charter plane, usually like a 3 or 4 seater, and we fly out to remote communities. So that could be Roper Gulf region, like Nuka or Numbua or Lajamanu, which are all beautiful Indigenous communities in the Northern Territory. And then from there, the day it could go anywhere. So when we're out bush, we see clients face to face, often having not seen them for sometimes 4 or 5 weeks. So it's really busy. But the nicest thing is like everyone is so excited to see you, and we're so excited to get out there too. So they're like the best days. That's my favorite day. So we'll do like face-to-face sessions, drive around, see everybody that we need to, and then like plan our schedule for the rest of the week. Because we could do anything out there from like assistive technology to home mods to mental health. And then we work a pretty long day out there. And then I usually run a community-based yoga class on country as well. So we do like a beautiful women's wellness, and then we do all genders as well. And then we do one for kids too, which is really cool. So they're always full, and they're my favorite part of the day. So it's very different. And then when I'm in the clinic, it's completely different too. So when I'm out on country, it's really busy. We know that that's going to be a really busy time. So then when I'm in the clinic, the day changes a little bit as well. And I tend to take things a little bit slower. So I might not come in till 9 or 10 and just really look after my own body, look after myself, and spend some time kind of nurturing that too, because usually you're running on a lot of adrenaline when you come back from out bush.
Yeah. And so how long would you stay out bush for?
We usually stay out for the week. So a lot of therapists will fly in, fly out for a day, and I have tried that before, and I just didn't love it because you don't get a chance to really immerse yourself. And a whole part of Indigenous health is being able to build rapport, build connections, build a community. And the week out there is just my favorite. Like you can see things progress in that time. You can spend a lot of time with someone working on their goals, and you can just get to know someone really well, which is really, really
Mm.
special. It's such a privilege. I love it so much.
That's really cool. And so, how did you get into doing all this work? How did you get into OT and how did you get into working in remote communities?
Oh wow. Like it was a big journey. If you had told me, 10 years ago that I would be living in Alice Springs and working in remote communities, I probably would have laughed because it just seems so far like out of range for me, which is crazy. So I went through school. What did I do when I finished school? When I first finished school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I studied teaching at uni for a year, did that, transitioned over to something else because I was like, oh, that's not for me. So then I did exercise and sports science. And I was modeling for 10 years, like while I was at the end of school going through uni. So
Mm.
very, very different lifestyle. And then when I got to the end of my sports science degree, it was either go into exercise physiology or you could apply for masters in physio or OT. And I'd really enjoyed, we'd done like a mental health and nutrition side of things, and I'd really, really enjoyed that. My auntie's an OT. So I just
Mm.
thought, you know what? I'm going to give this a go. And I called her up and I was like, so what's your job? What's involved with your job? Ended up enrolling and loved it. Like it's just the most incredible job in the world. It's so, so amazing because you actually get to work with people on their occupations, which is what they love to do. Like, so it's sort of saying to someone, what's important to you? What do you miss doing? Or what would you like to be doing more of?
Mm.
And get to work with someone to do that is just incredible. Like, yeah.
That's so cool.
Mm.
And what brought you away from, so where did you study? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Freo, in Western Australia. I was a Freo girl, went to uni there. And then when I first finished uni, I started working in a few different areas. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I sort of jumped between disability and FOC rehab. OT was still really new, so it wasn't actually very well known. I think my first job paid like 35 grand or something like that per year, which is just wild. Like when you look at how many OT jobs there are now, like there's such a workforce shortage.
Yeah.
So had this like great OT job. I loved it. I thought that was like making millions. It was the best. I had a really cool team, cool supervisors. And then I was sort of coasting along for a few years and thought, oh, I really want to do something different. And I was really interested in working with women and with kids. And back then it was sort of like you worked in an area and that became your scope forever,
Mm.
which I was like, oh, if I don't change now, I'm not going to be able to ever get a job in that area. So I was applying for all these jobs, getting all these knockbacks. It was just not happening. And then I applied for a job in Darwin on a whim and got the job. Moved 6 weeks later, and then I ended up working there for a little bit. Then I moved on and set up somebody else's practice in the NT, and they were doing amazing things. And then I sort of thought, oh, I think I want to do things a bit differently, and went out on my own when I think I was like 28, and I went out on my own, started OT Inspire, just like, it's great when you're a bit younger and you're just a bit naive and very confident. But luckily, I think because I loved what I did, like it ended up working. You just make it work, right?
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing in business though at the very beginning. That was fun for my accountants. Very, very fun.
Oh my gosh, I feel the same way. Even like now, my mum, thankfully, my mum is an accountant, so like just been helping with my books at the moment, and I'm like, yeah, I'm really sorry about this, this
I
whole
know.
situation.
It's such a thing. My uncles are my accountants, and sometimes I'll just feel like, Mia, 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 Mia. And I'm like, yes, thank you. I appreciate all the education all the time. So yeah, no, I started OT Inspire in Darwin. I was seeing clients there and there wasn't many services in Alice Springs. So I was flying down every 2 weeks and I just fell in love with the town.
Mm.
To our Alice Springs is like the most beautiful community. There is so many strong women, like people are doing really, really cool stuff and it just draws you in. I think like you spend enough time there and you're like, I want to be here. And so I moved. I moved with my then partner and then set up the practice there and it's just grown from there. So I've been in Alice now since the end of 2019.
Yeah, that's a
And
while.
yeah. And it was a big shock. I mean, you go from living in such a big city like Freo to living somewhere remote. And then when I go out on country, I am so remote.
Yeah, and you're not just there, as you say, for a day, you're there for quite a long period of time. What do you find are some of the challenges of living remotely compared to living somewhere in a city?
Well, there's a few. I think the biggest thing is like there's only one store. So there's like a general store. If something's not there, you're not going to get it. There's a lot of instances like when there's flooding, such as there's flooding up in Arnhem Land at the moment and around Central Desert. So all the roads are closed. So you could be out there and a storm could hit and you could be stuck. And I think that's a really big thing for a lot of the families who live out there. Like it's really tough, right? Because you want to live where all your family, where all your connection, where all your culture and your country is. But it's really hard because of all these environmental factors that also impact it too. So sometimes food sources can be cut off for like months at a time, weeks at a time. And the general store, like, will just do the best they can, but things start to dwindle down. So that's a huge part of it. Like, you get your basic meals out there, but everything is really expensive too because of
Mm.
all the journey it has to take. So it's a big barrier. Another big barrier was coffee for a very long time, very long. But a couple of the kids at the schools have set up small shipping container coffee shops as a incentive program. They've saved us for the last 6 months. It is the best incentive I have ever come across on country. I love it.
So
So
great.
coffee, we get like the most amazing coffee from these kids learning to make them, and they're really, really good. But I think like the biggest thing is you're away from people, right? So you're away from like all your support networks, you're away from all your family for long periods of time. Sometimes reception might cut out, like you might lose power, you might not have internet, so it could just go anyway. And I think we're also dealing with really complex, challenging situations. So you're processing like a lot of vicarious trauma with
Mm.
also managing yourself in like a whole new environment.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true. And do you plan to stay out there for a little while yet or?
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I go out to Nooka and Yurupunga and Numbulwar a lot, and they are Nooka would be, I think it's about 8 hours via road from Darwin,
Yeah.
and then Numbulwar is like another couple of hours from there as well. And they're the most beautiful, beautiful communities. The people out there are just incredible and so resilient and so strong and so inspiring as well. I have learned so much more than I can ever give in therapy services. And I think that just having a place that welcomes you and that you feel so at home in is speaks volumes for the people living out there as well. It's
Yeah.
so special. Yeah, we always say we come back. My manager Marley and I are always like, we come back. So we leave, we're like, full of energy, bushy-tailed, all the rest of it. We come back looking pretty disheveled because it's some pretty long days because you're just trying to cram whatever you can
Yeah.
in. But our cups are full. So we might look completely horrific on the outside, but our cups are like so full. Emotional cups are like overflowing.
That's so nice. And so you've got this side of your business where you go and help communities. But do you have another side of your business as well that kind of helps other businesses and therapists?
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, big part of that. So we also do the Freedom Therapist Club, which is an online hub for private practice owners. I found when we were doing what we were doing, a lot of people were like, how are you doing that? How do you get out there? I wish I could do that. And I'm like, you absolutely can. You 100% can. It just takes a little bit of planning, a bit of strategy, a bit of time. And I think it's like, you're not taught how to do a lot of this stuff at uni. And you're also not taught how to run a business, right? Like same as you. Like we're taught our skills, but we're not taught, how to run a business, how to manage stuff, how to prioritize your time,
How to do your
um,
tax?
how to do your taxes. Exactly. God, that was a good learning curve. And it's also like the other part of it is I didn't know like who books a charter plane, like how does that
Mm.
plane come? How do you find accommodation? So many things. And I was like, I'm only one person. I have the most incredible team, but how can I actually empower other therapists to be able to do remote work or to be able to be in this profession long term without burning out? Because that is also a huge, huge part of it at the moment. Like there's a really strong burnout story among therapists, I think, because we're so used to putting others before ourselves, putting our clients first. You're not allowed to make money. You're not allowed to grow. Like you're almost like yeah, it's not something that we're taught to really stand in and really own as therapists at all, I
Mm.
don't think. And it's a common thing that I've talked about with a lot of, especially female therapists too, because we are more sensitive. We want to do these things because we care, but it's like looking at it from the other lens of like when you're depleted and you have no energy and you're burnt out, you can't help anyone. So
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Totally. Totally. I feel like therapists definitely would have this issue, but also business owners in general, particularly women in business as well, like struggle charging and they struggle with burnout and they struggle with all these things. Have you, I'd love to chat about, I guess, the connection between our nervous system and our well-being and what you see the connection between those two things are for those of us running businesses.
my gosh, there's so much. And I think a lot of it, like I learned the hard way along the way. You know, you burn out once, you learn from that. You're like, oh, I won't do that again. You burn out
Hopefully.
like the twice, third time, you're like, oh, I won't do that again. Third time, you're like, all right, I've got to make some changes here. And
Mm,
that's part of it. Like when you are running a female-led business, you're usually a bit of a pioneer in the field. You love what you do. You're excited by what you do. You're passionate. You're motivated. You're driven because you have to be able to
mm,
survive. But also we're not prioritizing our well-being at the start. And it also takes us like it's working through a lot of guilt. I think a lot of the women I work with feel a lot of guilt about, you know, oh, I'm not working hard enough. I don't deserve to earn this much, or I don't
yep.
deserve to have that flexible lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so many women working 40, 50 hours a week. And yes, you're making really good money, but at like what cost as
What
well? So
God.
the
Yeah.
system is depleted. Um, so what I like to look at is like looking at it in your daily practice, right? Because long term, it's very hard to say, this is what I'm going to change for the year. We're probably not going to stick to that. And we're just going to set it like another New Year's resolution. But when you look at the day and what you can do each day, there's so many different things. And I think the biggest one for me is like figuring out what works for your body. So listening to your body, listening to how your nervous system reacts to situations as well, because you
Mhm.
need to be able to recognize it. So when anxiety shows up, you know, are you getting sweaty palms? Are you feeling like that heaviness here? Is it coming up in rapid breathing? Like, how does that look? Because it looks so different for everyone.
Yep.
Being able to see it and like feel it and recognize it is huge, because once you can kind of see it, then you can go, all right, I know what's happening here. And then I can kind of go, what do I need from here on in?
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, once you can kind of recognize the feeling, the strategies that I kind of lean on and use with my team and the women that I work with are all around like controlling what you can control.
Yeah.
So we work with so many different personalities and we work with a lot of urgency. So I don't think I've ever got a referral that wasn't urgent, because, you know, there's big wait lists and people are in crisis and there's a lot of socioeconomic factors that are impacting the work that we do in the territory.
Mm.
So every single referral that I get is usually urgent. And it's like, how do you prioritize someone else's needs over somebody else? So you can't, but you have to just take that real bird's eye view and then look at what you can control there too. So a lot of that for me would be, okay, I can control how productive I am within my day and how can I control my day so that I'm actually getting the best output for the work that I'm putting in. So working with therapists, we look at, all right, when are you most on? So that might be the morning, it might be the afternoon. And often we'll try and plan sessions around like parents and families are so busy. And so we might go, yeah, we can see you after hours or we can do that. But you might only be getting 60% of how good of a therapist you are. So really looking at your calendar and going, all right, I could do 3 clinic days here and feel really good. And then I can do my admin here, and blocking it out really early on is huge. So being able to plan it is massive. Um, sorry, I'm so dehydrated off the plane.
But
But being able to plan your week is in advance is huge. So being able to time block your stuff. And so grouping your tasks together, not checking your emails, you know, all day, because we find that's a really big nervous system trigger for a lot of our therapists that we work with, a lot of private practice owners, a lot of women in business. You know, you open your email and you're bombarded with so many things straight away. So you can't make a smart decision because your nervous system's gone straight into fight or flight. So
mm,
setting aside times to be able to do that is really important, and being in control of your time. So I always say that if you can spend more time on your time, it's going to help you to create more freedom in your business, which sounds silly because you're focusing on time so much, but planning a calendar, 2 weeks in advance rather than just the day before is going to create so much more flexibility and also give you a little bit of accountability to work with too. So I
Yeah.
think that's probably the first one. It's the most boring. It's not actually looking at your nervous system at all, but it's looking at what you can control rather
Mm,
than, those strategies, those reactive strategies. So I
yeah.
like to look at those. And then the other things I like to do are just weaving things in your everyday life. So your nervous system involves your sensory systems, which, your vision, your hearing, your taste, your smell, your touch, your proprioception, your vestibular, and your interoception, which is like your sleep, how hungry you are, how tired you are. And that's a massive one that we often overlook. And it wasn't really involved in the talks around the sensory systems for quite some time as well. So
Mm,
looking at your sensory system and then looking at what makes me feel good, you know, some people like to work with noise on. That makes us feel good. And some people need white noise and some people need silence. And so really taking it back and stripping it back to all your senses and finding things that work for you. So I like to look at that as, making sure I have enough sleep is huge. So my interoception isn't off, making sure I have enough food throughout the day and scheduling reminders to eat. Like we often work through lunch and then we wonder why we're so dysregulated by the afternoon, but it's like we've just powered on, but have we actually?
mm.
Um, and then looking at those other factors, which are always really nice to work in. So making your space your own, especially if you're working remotely and working from home, having a designated space that's set up to match your sensory needs and what you find, promotes optimum work is so much better than like working from your bed. And like every now and again, you're probably going to work from your bed. That's fine. Give yourself grace on those days. But making sure you can control what you can control on your workstation setup is huge. So
Mm.
having something nice to smell, an essential oil, some noise cancelling headphones, something to snack on. And sometimes in winter, I'll have like a lovely weighted blanket on my lap under my
Sounds
table.
nice.
The best is the actual best. So yeah, setting up your workspace is huge, I think, as well.
Oh, hello. I'm interrupting this episode super quickly to let you know that we have limited availability to work with the team at White Deer Studio. If you want done for you graphic or brand support, that means doing your graphics for you. Anything from bespoke social media templates to launch graphics or a full branding package, our team are ready to support you. Just head to whitedeer.com.au/design studio to find out more. That's the color white, the animal deer.com.au/design studio to find out more. We cannot wait to work with you. All right, back to the episode. Yeah, those are some great tips. And like even just being able to, like the tip you said at the very start of just knowing what you're feeling and like I guess tuning into that. I've always been really bad at tuning into how I'm feeling. I'll go to like a masseuse or this and like, oh, where are you sore? I'm like, I have no idea. Like somewhere, I'm sure I feel sore, but what is this? When does it hurt more? I don't know. And so it's kind of about like being able to tune into these things because that will then help us to one, realize that something might need addressing, I guess. Hey, and then being able to do something to make sure that that doesn't become an ongoing thing and I guess become something that I guess could lead to that burnout piece.
100%. And it's recognizing like where we're at, what we're feeling. And I think we put our clients' well-being at like first and foremost. Like all your clients you work with, you would be so conscious of where they're at, how they're feeling, nurturing that. But we often forget it about ourselves. And so being able to recognize like where we're at as a baseline is massive. And then you can
Mm,
incorporate little things into your day. So being really like flexible with your time. And sometimes when I'm writing case notes, I will just go for a walk and, somewhere confidential and I'll voice record them all because I'm like, I need a walk today, but I also don't want to leave that work till tomorrow because that's going to make me feel really stressed too. So figuring out where you're at there. Or I'll sometimes take like my yoga mat to work and like, because we have sessions there. So I'll go and have a stretch like at lunchtime and it only has to be 10 or 15 minutes, but it really makes a big difference. It's
yeah.
surprising how hard it is to move yourself away from the desk, but once you walk and get up, you're pretty good. So doing like little, just little incidental things makes a big,
Yeah.
big difference. And just getting outside. So if we've had like a really tricky conversation at work, we'll often say, go for a walk around the block or just go, go for a coffee across the road, and then come back and think about it. Because when we're in fight and flight, we're not going to make any good decisions.
Yeah.
And the way that they say we can regulate our body is by adjusting our breathing. So going back into rest and digest, our parasympathetic nervous system. So when you breathe, like really long inhales, long exhales, you're resetting your body to be able to hit that rest and digest phase. And the other thing that we say is talking to yourself and we like to say with kids, being the boss of your brain. But for adults, that often looks like, affirmations or like rewriting new stories. So the brain is always going to choose what's comfortable. So if you've been working in a really high state of stress for a long time, that's what it's going to be
Comfortable.
used to. Yeah, it's where it's comfortable. And then if you start to make changes like, I am actually going to come in an hour later, or I'm going to finish on time, of course your brain's going to go, oh my God, you're not going to have enough time to get this done. You're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do this, because it's like hardwired to protect us. But we have to feel uncomfortable to be able to make some changes as well. So things like having, like, I love to have like my little affirmations stuck on Post-its, or having a really beautiful journal that you enjoy sitting down to write, and not just like writing, oh yeah, today, blah, blah, blah. You can do that. That's so fine. But thinking about, who do I want to be? And who do I want to be by the end of the week? What could be the best thing that could happen today? And just really like leaning into the good that's happening there, like making sure you're reflecting on the good stuff that happened at the end of the day, and then planning for good stuff too, and preparing for good stuff, like teaching your brain that it's familiar to expect really good things to happen in your business as well.
That's so beautiful. And just, yeah, that idea of, I guess, training ourselves to training our brains to understanding a different level of comfortable. And like, it doesn't have to be this go, 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 or we don't have to always be checking our emails. We don't have to, we can, especially for those of us who do just work from home and do set our own rules. Sometimes we get stuck in this
Yep.
idea that it has to look a particular way. And it's like, well, actually, no, I could go on a walk and record this particular thing if I wanted to, or I could go do this writing thing go out, sit in the sunshine and do stuff differently. And I guess challenging ourselves that, are there parts of my day or my life that aren't filling my cup or aren't doing me good? And can I tweak that, and thinking
Yeah.
outside the box a little bit?
Yeah. And I think that's exactly it. Like, it's not about writing a whole new plan or a whole new way of doing things. It's going, which parts do I really not enjoy?
Mm.
And I love to do, like, my other favorite thing is to group your tasks. So when I've got a really long report to write, sometimes I'll go get a pedicure and I'll write it while I'm getting a pedicure, because I'm like,
Genius.
I'm going to look forward to that. That's going to be great. And it makes it so much easier to do. Or, just changing your environment. Sometimes writing from a different location is going to completely change your perspective. And it's also like important to remember that you can't always do those things. So finding the tweaks that you can make. So like, is it that you're going to put a beautiful piece of art above your office desk that you can look at that brings you a bit of joy? Is it going to be that you're, starting a little bit later and doing some stretching at home? So it's not necessarily making huge changes, but it's also just tweaking where you can and experimenting with, did that work? It probably won't work the first time, but maybe after a few weeks, it might make a really big difference. And they're like, just those tiny little level ups are going to create some really big space for cool stuff to start happening.
Yeah, that's really special. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's, yeah, something that the more that we focus on, the less likely we are to have that burnout and to start, I guess, resenting our job. And then, as you say, like with therapists particular, that they probably stop working in the field, but we need them. And it's the same for all of us running businesses, that if we let ourselves get pushed too far, then we're going to stop doing the thing that we love and is helping people.
And that's exactly right. And it's like, you can't prevent like the vicarious trauma or like the difficult conversations or the challenging days.
Mm.
So you might talk to a client who really dysregulates you. And that's how co-regulation works with our bodies. If somebody else's nervous system is dysregulated, it's going to dysregulate ours. You can't stop that, but you can have strategies to make it a bit easier and a bit more manageable as well. So also things like staying in the same hook. So like staying in that same story.
Mm.
Sometimes when something really challenging or really upsetting happens, we want to talk about it with everyone. We want to tell everyone about it. We want to be like, this happened to me. It was so unfair. And yes, it's important to have those conversations, but it's like taking that step back and going, is this making me feel better? or am I more focused on this problem? And could I do something to move through that energy rather than staying stuck on what that person did or what I couldn't control? Like, what can I actually control here? So we use that a lot when we supervise with private practice owners and therapists, because it's talking about like venting versus debriefing and reflecting. And you have to be able to debrief and reflect, but it's important to also, look for the good or focus on what you can control and what you can change there too. I mean, you need your community.
Yeah, that's so good. I love, and just that phrase of what can I control in this situation is such a great way to look at it, because as you say, like, we're not going to have like as much as like we try to create this dream business that supports us to do whatever the heck we want. It's like there are still going to be hard clients, hard days, hard situations, hard tax things. And so what can we control and look for the good in those situations and make that more of a sustainable long term? Because yeah, like I was talking to a client recently and she was nervous of posting on social media, for example, because she didn't want someone to comment negatively on her business. And then she's like, I wouldn't be able to deal with that if that happened. And I just felt that because I was like, it is really scary to put yourself out there, but at the same time, you like it, you have to. It's a really beautiful thing to be able to do, is to point past that. But like you have the control over different parts of this situation. Like what can you do differently, or how can you protect yourself in certain ways, or how can you be okay when that does happen, because it will happen. Those hard things do happen. And are they, is it worth doing the thing that resulted in the hard thing? Is it worth helping that client? Is it worth showing up on social media? Is it worth? And usually the answer is yes. So we have to, like, you can't avoid tax when you've got a business, so you have to do it. And so like
You can't avoid your case
these
notes.
things,
It's like you've got to get them done.
there's always
And
going to be a bad bit.
nah, and I think it's so relevant. Like there is so much talk on like affirmations and manifestations, which I do and I love, and I have those all in my daily practices. But you also need to manifest and talk about and future plan how you're going to deal with those challenging days, because it happens. So yes, I want to be like, I am going to invite in all this. I'm going to do all these wonderful things. Today's going to be a great day. But also one of my favorite practices is to be like, today's going to challenge me here, but I'm going to be able to do this to manage it well, confidently. And just showing up in that way is like really acknowledging that you're not perfect. And I think a huge part of being a therapist is there's a lot of pressure, especially as an OT, to know everything. Like we're a generalist by trade, and it's one of those jobs where it's like you could get a referral that 80% of the parts, but then you've got 20% where you're like, oh, I'm not fully sure on that. So then you have to access supports where you need to. But sometimes also you just have to lean into like your clinical expertise and your knowledge, and the supports that you access are probably going to tell you the same things that you were planning for. But you still need that reassurance, and you still need that when you're learning and growing, especially as a new OT. But it's really important to acknowledge that sometimes we do have those skills, it's already, and we just have to learn to move through those challenging situations with what we can and what we can use to help support us too.
Yeah, that's so true. And there'll be always things that we're learning, and there's always things that we're growing in, but there's also things that we do need to give ourselves more credit for. And like, if someone asks that hard question, or someone needs this hard thing, or I'm needed to do this hard thing,
Yeah.
can I do it? Or if someone even says something, can I focus? Can I work through these emotions? And
Yeah.
I guess talking yourself through that and being the boss of your brain.
Yeah.
We're like, actually,
Right. Yeah.
this is just a feeling, or this is just a this. I can work through this.
Yeah. And just separating yourself from that thought, because when we're in
Mm.
that stress, like that thought can take over, and it's the most simplest thing sometimes. Like I might be really stressed or really upset about something, and I'm like, hang on, that's my frustration about this. And actually saying it out loud, my housemate's like, what's she doing? But it incredibly well, because you can recognize that's not controlling me. I'm controlling the thought, and I can actually control my body's response to this. What do I need right now? And, maybe it's to connect with somebody else. Maybe it's to talk. Maybe it's to share. Maybe it's to move my body. Maybe it's to do some breathing. It's all of these little things that make up a huge, huge resilient body and brain, because we don't want to get rid of the negative emotions, because then life would be very gray. We need those really, really hard times, because often the best times are linked to those hard times. So, if we said, could you take away all those awful times, but then you have to take away all the great things too? 9 times out of 10, everyone would be like, no. So we just need to be able to find ways to be able to manage and survive and cope in a really healthy way.
Yeah, yeah. That's really beautiful. I think that's a wonderful note to end on. So thank you for sharing that. I would love to know if we want to learn more from you or connect with you, or particularly if there's any therapists listening that want to learn from you, how can we connect?
Awesome. Well, we have OT Inspire Therapy on Instagram, and on Facebook, we're OT Inspire Australia. That's our remote practice clinic. And then when I work with therapists, you'll find me at Mia Poco, because my last name Poklepovich is way too hard to spell on Instagram. So that's where that came from. And we do the Freedom Therapist Club. And any therapists, private practice owners who are looking for that support and looking for that community and that space to be able to grow, that's where you'll find us. I love showing up on Instagram. It's where I share a lot of things, and it's where you'll get most of our updates too. So Instagram is my fave. You will find us on Facebook too, but we are more active on Insta. And we would love to connect with any therapist or even females in service business. Like, I know we work with like massage therapists and dietitians and those who are doing like energy work.
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, all of our jobs are giving our energy and helping somebody else to grow. And we need to work out ways to protect our energy and build those foundations so that we can keep doing the work that we're doing forever.
yeah, that's such a great way to put it. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I so appreciate your time and your insights.
Sure.
And yeah, there's a lot to think about there of yeah, crafting a business that can look after us, but also knowing that we can step through those hard times as well. So thank you for
Yeah.
joining us today. I so appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having me. It was beautiful. Thank you so much.
So thank you for joining Mia and I today. I've so enjoyed having you, and I hope you learned so much about your business, your nervous system, and running a business that's going to help you to thrive. I'll talk to you next episode. Bye.